My name is Colby Sharp. I'm a fifth grade teacher in Michigan. Welcome to my channel where we try to help kids fall in love with reading. If you're new, consider subscribing and liking this video and all that stuff because, helps more people find this stuff, and hopefully I'm bringing some value to viewers out there. Today we're talking about a very important topic, a topic near and dear to my heart, and that is read aloud. So before I go anymore, let me know in the comments, what are your favorite books to read aloud to kids? Because I'm always looking for new books to try reading aloud to kids. So we're gonna talk about read aloud, and I'm filming this video towards the end of the school year, and I have just selected the last read aloud of the school year. And I don't know about you, but that stresses me out because it's like the last book that we'll experience together, like this family that we have as readers. Like we have read so many amazing books together from early in the year when we read Jacqueline Woodson's Before the Ever After. And we were blown away by that novel in verse, to reading Megan Freeman's Alone and just being captivated by that survival story, and so many books in between. And this is it, like the last one. And as a fifth grade teacher, the end of the hall, the end of elementary school, it's possible, I don't exactly know how all the middle school classrooms work. It's possible for some of these kids, this is the very last book they will ever have read aloud to them. The very last chapter book that they will ever experience in a classroom. And I don't know about you, but there's something special that I feel happens in a classroom that reads aloud every single day and shares amazing books and talks about them. It's just something special. I fell in love through read aloud, and I know so many kids around the country have fallen in love with reading this year because of the read aloud that their teacher has done and the experience that they had with their classroom community around that read aloud. And there's so many teachers today that are teachers today because they fell in love with books and reading through read aloud, and so many lawyers and doctors and linemen and construction workers and people all over in all walks of life that live a more rich life because they fell in love with reading through read aloud. So the last read aloud book is so important. And not only is it so important because I have to get it right, but it's so important because there's so many choices. And I keep thinking they're leaving elementary school. What if they go and they never ever read this author, or they never get a chance to experience this book? I failed them. School, the world has failed them, right? If a kid gets out of elementary school without maybe having ever read a Jason Reynolds book, maybe that's more middle school, or leave elementary school without ever experiencing K.D. Camillo, have we failed them? I don't want to fail them. So I thought long and hard, and I struggled, and I didn't know what to pick, right? And I wanted to pick something that we couldn't stop turning pages, that we had to keep reading one more chapter, that from the very first chapter they were hooked and all in. And I kept thinking about it, I couldn't figure it out. And the wildest thing is yesterday, when I'm filming this, I don't know when you're watching it, I had one of the hardest days I've ever had at school. There's just a lot going on, and I'm overwhelmed, and it's COVID, and it's life, and I was having a really hard day, and we had 7 minutes left in the day, and I saw a book, and I'm like, I love that author, and I've loved reading that author aloud, but I haven't read this book. And I said, we have a few minutes, I'm just gonna read my kids the first chapter. Oh my gosh, it was so magical. They were so hooked. The way that first chapter ends and the characters that they met in those first handful of pages, it was just, there's no doubt that this was going to be our last read aloud. And I always do try during the year to read one book aloud to my students that I haven't read so we can experience it together. I think as a teacher, reading and helping kids develop skills as readers and know how readers process text, I think it's helpful to go through a text for the first time with kids at least once in a year. It's always a little risky, but I knew that I could trust this author. And we have now been through 2 days reading aloud this book. The first day, just the first chapter, and then the second day, the next 4. And it's so magical. I just can't say, I can't even explain how good it has felt sharing the story with them. And this story is Halfway to Harmony by Barbara O'Connor, and they're all in, like 100% all in. It was one of those things today where it was like one more chapter. You know, like as a teacher, we kind of get, you know, the kind of kids like one more chapter, and then you read the chapter, and then like one more chapter, and sometimes you keep going, so I just stop. But like today, it was so genuine every single time that we just kept reading, and it like the time just like melted away, and we were so lost in this story, and we had to know what happened next. But then like we honestly had to go somewhere, and the way that the chapter ended, the way that chapter 5 ended, it was so hard to stop. Like all day we've just been trying to find more time to keep reading because we're just hooked. And like that is what I want them to be thinking about as they leave this class. That is a feeling that I want them to hold in their heart. That is the feeling that I held in my heart when I was in the classroom next door and Mrs. Collins and our student teacher, Mr. Bontrager, read us aloud Gary Paulson's Hatchet. And that was the time in my life that seed was planted of me becoming a reader. And it wasn't until many years later and many struggles with reading that I fell in love with it all over again. And if it wasn't for Hatchet, none of this would have happened. I truly believe that in my heart. And my hope is that through reading aloud books like Halfway to Harmony and leaving my kids with that one more chapter, one more page, I have to know what happens next. I care so much about these kids I just met. That is life-changing. And it is through read alouds that we can change the trajectory of our readers going forward. We can teach them all the skills, and those are important. We can teach them all the strategies, and those are important. But everything is so much easier and means so much more when we help them and we get them to fall in love with reading and books. This is a book that I'm loving. I hope you have a great last read aloud or current read aloud with your students. I hope that it is as magical to them as this read aloud is to my kids. My name is Colby Sharp. Thank you for tuning in.